the boxing world didn't just react. It paused and took serious notice the moment footage began circulating of Xander Zayas stepping into camp alongside Canelo Álvarez, because this wasn't just another routine training session or a casual cameo for headlines. It felt like a calculated move that hinted at something much bigger developing behind the scenes ahead of Zayas' looming challenge against Jaron Ennis, and from the very first clips, the intensity, focus, and purpose of the work being shown suggested that this wasn't about publicity. It was about evolution, about refining a young fighter under the guidance of one of the most complete and experienced champions in the sport, and what made it even more compelling was how quickly fans across the United States and the United Kingdom locked onto the moment, recognizing that when a rising prospect like Zayas aligns himself with someone like Canelo at such a critical stage, it often signals a shift in preparation, mindset, and expectations, creating a wave of speculation that this could be the turning point where Zayas doesn't just improve, but transforms into something far more dangerous, far more polished, and far more capable of handling the kind of elite challenge that Ennis represents, turning what might have been a simple training update into a storyline filled with anticipation, pressure, and the growing belief that this fight may not unfold the way many initially expected. What makes this development so compelling isn't just the presence of Canelo Álvarez, but everything he represents at the highest level of the sport, because training alongside a fighter known for elite discipline, championship experience, and calculated ring IQ offers a kind of exposure that simply can't be replicated in a standard camp. And for Xander Zayas, this isn't just about sharpening combinations or improving conditioning. It's about stepping into an entirely different environment where every detail matters, where preparation is treated like an exact science, and where mentality becomes just as important as physical ability, allowing him to observe firsthand how an elite champion studies opponents, manages pressure, and maintains composure under the highest expectations. And what makes it even more significant is how this kind of experience can quietly reshape a fighter from the inside out, influencing not just how he trains but how he thinks, reacts, and performs when the stakes are at their highest. Turning this moment into far more than a simple collaboration, it becomes a potential turning point where Zayas begins to evolve beyond raw talent into a more complete, more disciplined, and far more dangerous fighter capable of handling the kind of challenge that someone like Jaron Ennis presents. Early footage from the camp didn't just show training. It revealed a level of intensity and detail that immediately caught attention, with sessions centered around precision, timing, and devastating bodywork, the very areas where Canelo Álvarez has built his reputation through years of elite competition. And watching Xander Zayas working closely within those drills made it clear that this wasn't about routine preparation or simply staying sharp. It was about transformation, about carefully adding new dimensions to his game that could fundamentally change how he performs under pressure. And what made it even more compelling was how deliberate everything looked, as if every movement, every combination, and every adjustment was being fine-tuned with a specific purpose in mind, reinforcing the idea that this camp is focused on evolution rather than maintenance. Because when a fighter begins to absorb elements from someone as complete as Canelo, it's not just about copying technique. It's about understanding timing, patience, and how to break opponents down systematically. And with a dangerous challenge like Jaron Ennis on the horizon, those added layers could become the difference between surviving and truly competing at the highest level. Turning this training footage into more than just a preview, it feels like a warning that Zayas may be preparing to show a version of himself that opponents haven't yet seen. On the other side of this equation stands Jaron Ennis, a fighter widely regarded as one of the most complete and explosively gifted talents in boxing today, known for his rare versatility, sharp speed, and the ability to adapt mid-fight in ways that can completely shift momentum without warning. And that's exactly what makes Xander Zayas' decision to elevate his camp alongside Canelo Álvarez feel so significant. Because this isn't preparation for an average challenge or a routine step forward. It's preparation for a fighter many believe represents the future of the division, someone who doesn't just rely on one strength but brings multiple threats at once, forcing opponents to think, react, and adjust at the highest possible level. And what makes this dynamic even more intense is the realization that Ennis isn't the type of fighter you can simply outwork or outlast. He forces evolution, he exposes gaps, and he punishes hesitation, which means that every improvement Zayas is making in camp isn't just beneficial, it's necessary, turning this entire build-up into something far more serious, where preparation isn't about gaining an edge, it's about surviving against a talent that has already shown the ability to overwhelm and outclass opponents in ways that feel both calculated and explosive at the same time. As more details from inside the camp began to emerge, it became increasingly clear that this wasn't just about pushing physical limits or sharpening technique, but about a deeper level of mental transformation, with Canelo Álvarez reportedly placing heavy emphasis on discipline, patience, and complete control. Qualities that have defined his success at the highest level and allowed him to remain composed under intense pressure, and for Xander Zayas, that kind of guidance carries enormous weight, because adopting even a fraction of that mindset doesn't just improve performance. It can fundamentally change how a fighter thinks, reacts, and handles adversity in the most critical moments, especially against someone like Jaron Ennis, who thrives on exploiting hesitation and forcing opponents into uncomfortable situations. And what makes this development so compelling is the idea that while physical skills can be trained and refined, mentality is what ultimately defines outcomes at the elite level, meaning that if Zayas truly absorbs these lessons, this camp could do more then prepare him. It could reshape his entire approach to high-pressure situations, turning potential weaknesses into strengths and giving him a level of composure that might be crucial when the fight reaches its most intense moments. Fans didn't take long to recognize how significant this partnership could be, and the reaction spread rapidly across social media platforms in the United States and the United Kingdom, where debates quickly intensified around whether training alongside Canelo Álvarez could provide Xander Zayas with the edge he needs to compete at the highest level, or if the natural talent, adaptability, and growing experience of Jaron Ennis will ultimately prove too much to overcome. And what makes this discussion so compelling is how evenly it splits opinion, with some believing that exposure to Canelo's discipline and elite-level preparation could unlock a new version of Zayas capable of handling the pressure, while others argue that Ennis operates on a level that can't simply be matched through one training camp, no matter how high-profile it may be, and this divide doesn't weaken the narrative. It strengthens it, because it adds layers of uncertainty, anticipation, and tension, turning the potential matchup into more than just a fight, but a question waiting to be answered, where preparation, talent, and mentality are all set to collide in a way that keeps fans fully engaged and constantly debating what might happen when these two paths finally cross inside the ring. One of the most talked about aspects of the camp has been the heavy emphasis on bodywork, a signature element of Canelo Álvarez's style, and seeing Xander Zayas actively incorporating that approach into his training has sparked serious speculation about a deeper, more calculated game plan taking shape. Because this isn't just about adding punches to the arsenal, it's about targeting a long-term strategy designed to break an opponent down round by round, and against someone like Jaron Ennis, who relies heavily on speed, movement, and explosive transitions. That kind of focus could be critical, as consistent and well-placed body attacks have the potential to gradually slow him, reduce his mobility, and limit the very explosiveness that makes him so dangerous. And what makes this development even more intriguing is how deliberate it feels, almost like Zayas and his team are preparing not just to compete, but to systematically dismantle key strengths over time, creating a scenario where early rounds might look competitive or even cautious, but the real damage begins to reveal itself as the fight progresses, turning this adjustment into more than just a technical tweak. It becomes a strategic weapon that could fundamentally influence how the fight unfolds if executed effectively. At the same time, the presence of Canelo Álvarez in camp sends a message that goes far beyond technique or strategy. It's psychological, almost symbolic, because it shows that Xander Zayas is willing to step outside of his comfort zone and pursue the highest level of preparation possible, surrounding himself with elite experience in a way that signals serious intent. And that kind of commitment doesn't just sharpen skills, it builds a different kind of confidence, the kind that comes from knowing you've prepared at the absolute highest standard. And what makes it even more impactful is how that message extends beyond Zayas himself and reaches Jaron Ennis, because when an opponent sees that level of dedication and willingness to evolve, it subtly shifts perception, raising questions about what improvements might be coming and whether the version of Zayas they've studied is the same version they'll actually face, turning preparation into a psychological factor that adds tension before the fight even begins, where belief, expectation, and uncertainty all start to play a role in shaping how both fighters approach what could become a defining moment in their careers. Analysts have started to dig much deeper into what this collaboration could actually mean inside the ring, and the early breakdowns suggest that if Xander Zayas can successfully absorb and apply key elements of Canelo Álvarez's approach, particularly controlled aggression, efficient movement, and the ability to dictate pace without overcommitting, then the entire dynamic of a potential clash with Jaron Ennis could shift in a way that few initially expected. because instead of facing a talented but relatively straightforward opponent, Ennis could be dealing with a far more layered and adaptable version of Zayas, one capable of switching tempos, managing distance more intelligently, and applying pressure without becoming vulnerable. And what makes this idea so intriguing is how it transforms the narrative, turning what some previously viewed as a clear-cut matchup into something much more competitive and strategically complex, where adjustments, timing, and mental discipline could play just as big a role as raw talent, creating a scenario where even a slight evolution in Zayas' style might be enough to disrupt Ennis' rhythm and force him into a different kind of fight altogether. However, it's important not to overstate what a high-profile camp can guarantee, because even training alongside someone like Canelo Álvarez doesn't automatically translate into success once the lights are on, and for Xander Zayas, the real test won't be what he learns in sparring or drills, but how effectively he can execute those lessons under real pressure against an opponent as dangerous and unpredictable as Jaron Ennis, because boxing at the elite level is defined by split-second decisions, adaptability, and composure in moments where everything can change instantly. And while the camp may equip Zayas with new tools, sharper instincts, and a more refined approach, none of it matters unless it can be applied in real time against a fighter who is constantly adjusting, attacking, and looking to exploit any hesitation, making it clear that preparation is only one part of the equation, and that when the fight begins, it ultimately comes down to execution, resilience, and the ability to perform when there's no room for error. Meanwhile, the spotlight has quietly shifted toward Jaron Ennis and how he might respond to this development, because at his level, fighters don't just train. They analyze, adapt, and evolve in real time, constantly studying every move their opponent makes, and the moment Xander Zayas stepped into camp with Canelo Álvarez, it likely triggered a deeper level of attention from Ennis and his team, knowing that this isn't just a minor adjustment but a potential shift in style, mindset, and overall approach. And what makes this dynamic so compelling is that preparation is no longer happening in isolation, because now both sides are reacting to each other, anticipating changes, and making their own adjustments behind the scenes, creating a layered chess match that begins long before fight night, where every decision, every training focus, and every strategic tweak could influence the outcome, turning this into more than just a physical contest and instead into a battle of preparation, awareness, and adaptation, where even a single adjustment on one side could force a counter-adjustment on the other, making the entire matchup feel even more complex, unpredictable, and mentally intense as both fighters move closer toward a potential collision. The timing of this collaboration adds a serious layer of intrigue, because with the fight drawing closer, every adjustment, every decision, and every small detail in camp carries amplified importance, and the choice by Xander Zayas to bring in someone like Canelo Álvarez at this stage doesn't feel random. It feels calculated, like a final push to reach peak performance right when it matters most, and that kind of late-camp refinement can be incredibly telling, because it suggests that the focus has shifted from building fundamentals to sharpening weapons, tightening strategy, and preparing for very specific scenarios that could arise against an opponent as dangerous and adaptable as Jaron Ennis. And what makes it even more compelling is the sense of urgency behind it, as if every session now carries the weight of what's coming, turning training into a race against time where even the smallest improvement could become decisive, creating a situation where this move isn't just about improvement, it's about maximizing every possible advantage before the moment arrives, adding tension, anticipation, and a feeling that both sides are entering the most critical phase of preparation where nothing is left to chance.